Welcome back, everybody, to the After Hours ERP podcast. Well, actually, it's lunchtime at the moment, so it's in between hours. I'm going to call it. But thank you for joining me in this journey. I'm here to speak with individuals, companies that enrich the ERP journey that I'm in right now. So, without further ado, I want to introduce and welcome you to Brian Booden, Managing Director for DataGlow IT. Thank you so much for joining me, Brian. How's it going?
Oh, you're very welcome, Rob. I'm so glad we were able to get this moving at last.
I
I'm really
know,
excited to be here.
I know you're a very busy man. So yeah, no, please, well, I've known you. I just want to quickly introduce how I've known you. So, back over when I was at Volac, oh God, like 7 years ago or something like that, you came in to help with a ClickSense solution that we had integrating with IFS at the time. And to be quite honest, I haven't seen such good buy-in from, let's say, sales
Mm.
representatives, and people that have used this tool. So that was the tool I was using it for, mostly for sales. But and I know things have evolved since. But it was fantastic. I had fantastic feedback from that, and I'm just drawing upon the people that I've met with over the years. But yeah, tell me more about yourself. Like, how did you start? How did you get on since? Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. Well, 7 years ago, wow. I think it might actually be a little bit longer than that. But if I put
Really?
it in the time frame of ClickSense has been around that time. And probably when we were working with it, it was a very different beast to what it is now. But yeah, I'm Brian, and I like around the time after I finished up with you, actually, I started my own business, DataGlow IT, my own data consultancy, and we've been running for the last sort of 7 years now.
Wow.
And I'm really pleased that got a little bit of traction in the market, and I work pretty closely with Qlik. You can see from my vest here
Yeah,
that
of course.
it wasn't really intentional, the logo to be in there, but I've been sort of recognised by Qlik for the last 8 years for the work that I've done with them directly and outside as a partner ambassador in Luminary. So yeah, look, it's nice to get a little bit of attention on the odd podcast or two. So I'm really glad to be here. And like you say, visualization is something that people always need, and that will never change in an ERP or not environment. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today about that in a bit more detail.
Wow, that's really great. So I guess, were you working for a partner or someone then, and then you
Yeah,
started your own after? Wow. So you've actually what? Okay, I've got a question for you. Like, what led you into working specifically as a data and reporting consultant then, and then now it's almost like solely focused on this. So maybe you slice across different, would you say you work for different ERPs most, or do you even like work for companies that are not even using an ERP? And what led you down the path of that, and then to starting your own company? I just want to give a quick, like, because obviously it's such a
yeah.
niche area. Yeah.
I can help summarize this a little bit, and I think, like, when I started my journey, I was actually in the legal sector, and that's how I got exposed to
No
IFS to
way.
start with,
Okay.
and time recording. I actually sat in between the IT department and the finance department in a law firm, so I very quickly had to learn how to generate hundreds of reports, and also to be able to talk to both sides of the business about what was in the reports, to be
Mm-hmm.
quite technical about it, and also to be able to describe what was happening at the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of that's where Qlik, sort of our Qlik View as it was back then, came into the scenario. I kid you not, I was maintaining probably about 250 crystal reports manually. Um,
No
and
way.
converted that down to about
Feel that.
10 Qlik View apps probably.
No
So that's
way.
how the journey all started. And
Right.
for a long time, I was working on the client side, like in legal and manufacturing. I worked for
Right.
a well-known drinks manufacturer as well, alcoholic drinks manufacturer in Scotland, again in production supply chain IFS. Um, and then it's sort of been a bit of a journey through the other side of the consultancy chain, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually my black book got big enough to be able to sort of step out on my own, which is
Nice.
super fun because I get to do stuff like this. So yeah.
Nice. Nice. Yes. Wow. Okay. Well, okay, I'm gonna dive into it. Maybe are you able to show me like a little bit of what I'm working with, like most the tidy dashboards? Because again, this is all about
Sure.
um reporting. At the heart of it is about a little bit about style, right? So let's have a look. What are we
Yeah,
working?
let's have a look and, and bring a few things up here. Let me share my screen here.
Yeah, let's go.
So I think one of the interesting things about ERP, right, is that it's quite all encompassing, right? By nature of ERP, you're dealing with a lot of areas, and I think a lot of people see what they see is a lot of stuff like this in a finance area, right, where you've got a P&L and a cash flow and a profit and loss, and you need to be able to deal with all these tabular things that are happening in here, and that's pretty standard to have to deal with all of that, right? But I think let's just get a single version of the truth out there to start with and say that it's super important to be able to work with a reporting environment that doesn't allow you to alter things. So
Hmm.
Excel should always be the last stop, and we'll talk about this a little bit further on. But I guess finance reporting is a big one, right? But
Hmm.
you've got other like really obvious areas like manufacturing and operations and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and forecasting. And again, really being able to dig in quickly to your numbers and pull out the key things that are important, because data visualization doesn't mean displaying everything.
Hmm.
It means displaying the things that matter. So, if I want to be able to see, for example, one particular area in here, I can click down on it, and be able to select these different parts to be able to see what's going on.
Hmm.
And we've got our plant operations and stuff there. And if I look at, for example, manufacturing output and loss, here's another one on just understanding where our manufacturing loopholes are and what's happening there in terms of loss analysis, and what that means in terms of time and money and materials, because these are the key things that matter when you're getting to IFS and other such ERPs, right? So it's about selectively pulling out the stuff that's going to make a real difference to your day to day in terms of the job that you do. And I think
Hmm.
visualizing anything is sometimes a mistake.
Hmm.
So I've just flashed that up just now, but I'll stop sharing just now so that
No,
we
that's
can
okay.
dig into that a little bit and we can talk about it.
No, again, this is you've just dropped a bunch of nuggets that we could have actually gone and done 30-minute discussions in each of them. And I think a lot of people, yeah, like anything in this space, but did you have any trouble in like going, well, how would a good reporting solution and investing in a data and reporting consultant play in when actually most, not even most recruiters, but managers, when doing their budgets, they're like, oh,
Hmm.
we need to improve this functional area, um instead of, where
Mhm.
do you think that plays into it, do you think?
Well, what I see, and this is not necessarily ERP specific, right? But what I do see a lot still is that reliance on the built-in tools that people have in organizations, right? And this is a long-standing issue that those tools are not, in most cases, fit for purpose for real analytical behaviors and building habits and how to use analytics and how to slice things in the right way. A lot of analytics tools I see that's built into software still do like bare bones reporting. And what I mean by that is that they might show some graphs, right? But you can't do anything with them. You can't drill down with them, and you can't really slice them the way that you want to. You can't combine them with other data sets dynamically. And I think that typically that's the tipping point, right? When you start to get a certain amount of questions that you cannot answer easily out of a system,
Hmm.
that's when you need to reevaluate whether what you've got is fit for purpose and whether you should be reaching out and like, should I be using an external tool? Should I get someone in who's got a rep as a consultant that deals with these kind of data munging? There's the first crazy word of the day, munging, pushing data together from different places,
Right.
because it's not
Mhm.
as easy as it seems sometimes as it's made to in these systems as well. So I think that's the first thing I would always assess, is whether the tool that you have is fit for purpose. And if it does, great. If not, evaluate where your return on investment is with that, with bringing a solution in or a consultant to handle that situation in a more pointed manner.
See, it's crazy to me. I think. there's a couple of things here. It's uh, this one is a discipline. Looking at reporting and data, it's not. It's so encompassing, and there's so much competition, and also, like you said, companies are tied to tools themselves. So even when they scope out work for consultancy or whatever else, they look for a specific consultant that's good with that particular tool. But I
Yeah.
guess if you're always going to go into the same path you've gone, you're always going to come back with the same similar solutions. It's really tough to nail down this question, but I just don't see many um focusing on this as a discipline. I remember there was a role that I was doing at Bodak. It was called business intelligence analyst, right? So you would think that that's primarily focused on and the reports, and rightly so, because it is a big part of an ERP
Mhm.
to be able
Yeah.
to interpret what's in the data set that you have is probably half the job. I mean, I would imagine for the people that's in there, and how do you assist those people? But obviously, there's tons of levels in here. But it is interesting to me. It's almost like it's refreshing, but it's also a good investment to just have a. It's like a checkup. Do you do a lot of these as
Mhm.
well? Like,
Yeah, look, I think that to tie on to what you said there, one of the biggest mistakes I see in organizations is leading with tooling and actually working out how to solve their problem by picking a tool and then trying to retrofit everything that they're doing into a tool.
mhm,
And look, like it's pretty clear for me, right? That I'm a Qlik guy and that's fine and that's cool, but sometimes it doesn't fit, right? And when it doesn't fit, you have to be able to say it doesn't fit and recommend something that does. And I think this is the difficulty of where we are right now in the AI space is that it's very, very tempting just to pick an AI tool that can do this.
mhm,
And before you know it, you're under the hood and you're in the weeds, and it's quite far along the line before you realize that you cannot do the things that you need to with that. And it's quite hard to unwind that. And that's typically where companies get to the situation where they're like, we tried to solve this with a tool and the tool doesn't work, right?
mhm.
And it's because they haven't maybe they need to take a more data led approach or a data literate approach. And I think that's where it's very hard for companies to just stop and say, look, is our data literacy level up to scratch? Do our users know how to do this and what to do with it? And how should we be solving the problem rather than which tool should we be using to solve the problem? And I think those are some things that I see really a lot still in a lot of places that I work.
Wow. Again, I want obviously lots there, but I want to like just drill down on this a tiny bit more, and
Mhm.
I think this question kind of flows. I've obviously prepped up a few, but obviously has to flow in the right way. So this one is particularly um of interest to me. Let's say a company doesn't have, like literally doesn't have a data. They don't even think about it. They just think about um how can we get the next update in,
Mm.
how can we get the super users in, like, but the data part, it's like actually some companies don't like. So it's funny, right? This is an example scenario that I'm gonna say is um okay, there's a quick report in IFS that gets generated, and then there's a business reporter tool in IFS that gets generated. Those two things together gets generated by a couple of people, then rolled up to the finance director, and then the finance director, by the time he gets it, that data gets, what was your term? Data mushed? What was it?
Munged was the
Data
word, but
munged.
mushed will work as well. Yeah.
Okay, well, data munged into an Excel spreadsheet that's unrecognizable, and now you like as a person working at the report trying to chip away at the problem, and especially if you're coming into it for the first time, like, it it's a lot of challenges, like unless you wrote them yourself, but if you didn't, you're in even more trouble.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like, and then you think 2 weeks have gone by, but it's a key report for the business, right? And
Yeah.
I think those are the things that I think, right? um Reports are for the entry level. And actually, I'm not even gonna lie to you, executives that don't even deal with this stuff,
Mhm.
managers that don't deal with this stuff, so I'm talking outside IT, have trouble in, they get, the problem with obviously the IT space and this space that we have right now, AR, it all sounds fancy, but actually it's all surface level. Like if it doesn't, if you're, like I said, I've just told you things that I've fallen over multiple times there. But if we were to start from scratch, and focus on good data, right? At the end of
Mhm.
the day, because at the end of the day, like reporting can't embellish crap, right? Like, um,
Yeah.
where would you go here? Where would you go from now, from here? Like, where would you even go? What would you say to a client? Like,
I think you have to start with a couple of things. You have to start with a data quality mindset, I think, is the very first thing. So what I see with ERP systems a lot is that they have they have validation, right? But they don't have data quality. So they can validate input to make sure it's of the right format, but it doesn't get quality checked particularly well, so that when you try and pull a report out of it, do you still have, let's take an example, the same SKU is named with 7 different tags throughout the ERP system, and when you try and aggregate that up, you maybe don't see that until reporting. That maybe shows as 7 individual items on 7 different reports when you pull it out of IFS or the ERP. But when you roll it up, like you said, and a point of caution, we should never do that roll up in Excel if we can get away with it, all right? Like, Excel is like the last resort here, despite the fact that it's the favorite tool in the world to do it in. You shouldn't really do
it's
it there.
free, and that's probably why.
It's free and it's Microsoft, and I get it, Luke, but it still doesn't make it right in terms of what you have available there today. There are many options to be able to deal with that data quality issue,
Mm,
and I think that is a number one priority. So data quality is one thing I would say. The second thing is, as a business, I'm shocked when I come into other businesses and ask them something like, what are your top 5 KPIs for sales and how do you calculate them?
mm.
And people look at me like, what do you mean? Like, what you mean, these numbers on Excel that have formulas behind them? Yeah, those. What are those formulas and how do you make sure they're repeatable in the same way every day for every person? And how do you make sure that doesn't change because you're in that environment? And again, it's like, honestly, a lot of people are just like, I think this is just what Jim did like 10 years ago in the Excel sheet. This is the formula. What do you mean? Like, how do we calculate it? And
Problem.
possibly that's a little bit of an old school example,
Mm,
right? But if you take it in a slightly more embedded way, it might be that in the ERP system, the KPI calculation has not been looked at for 5 years. So the thing that pops up on the report is a number, but do you really know where that number comes from? And I think we got, for quite a while, we got into a habit as a data community of just believing what systems give us, right? There, we went through a period of like, systems can't do manual reporting. It's like, oh, they can do reporting, and then they can do reporting and I trust them. And then they can do reporting, I trust them, and I never need to look at that again. And that's probably where we're at right now. But I think one of the traps that people fall into is they just trust the numbers that come out of the system because it's labeled as a report, right? And realistically, you need to be checking that every X amount of time, whether that's every year, every 2 years. That needs to be part of a data transformation flow that happens in your business. So when you talk about overhaul, I think you can avoid overhaul by keeping on top of your data and having a data steward that helps you to manage that, even if it's just in particular areas of your systems. But I think that's a really good place to start, is just having a more conceptual view of what your data is and what it means, and do you understand it? If you can ask those questions in an organization and they can give you clear answers, then great, just keep going. But if not, then we have a lot to do. And there's no middle ground either. It's either like it's good. If it's not good, then usually it's quite a journey to get back on the road. So
Well, what's just popped into mind when you fed me that gold really is, these KPIs. could outlast roles in the company. They could outlast the CEO. Like, they could outlast absolutely anybody. They're almost like a point of reference. Like, okay, what if I'm tracking my sales that's driving my business? What are those KPIs? And like you said, are those KPIs driven across all the different types of reports? Is this being maintained in a good way so that I could track them all the time? Or is it loosely embedded in a code no one knows and hidden
Mhm.
in the crags of an Excel
So
spreadsheet somewhere?
absolutely. So your sales figure is it actually calculated by the ERP? And when you roll out a major update to your ERP, does that calculation change under the hood because a table has changed or a new concept has been introduced? Do you know that's happening? How do you know? How do you find out? And the way that, generally speaking, that you deal with that is that you put a little bit of trust into something that is um, a bit more agnostic in terms of the way it reports, because then you know how things are getting calculated. You have got to put the effort in, right? There's no shortcuts here. Businesses don't like to hear that, but there's no shortcuts here. If you want to make sure your numbers are right, you got to put the work in to work out what your numbers are and how you calculate them. There's just no way around that. Well, the way around that is just to trust what your system gives you. But that's not the way to run a business in this day and age, in my opinion.
I mean,
So,
that's even like system agnostic, right? Because we're talking about the data flow your business runs on. Your data really doesn't care what ERP you're on. It doesn't care what reporting tool you're
yeah,
on.
yeah.
But the questions you can ask it are the same. Is this giving me the KPIs I need? So it's almost like you've cut right to the heart of it. What do you want to get? This is what you need to enforce. So eh, this is a very interesting topic for me because I'm in a sort of like, I could put myself in the shoes of a system administrator, and it's almost like pure dread. Like, you got 1,000 things to do, but actually you need a data drive. It's almost like it's really a business consultant at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Also, um, you're actually saying, right, what is important for your business? Is this being tracked by your data entry systems and reporting systems? Um, and then obviously to make use of your time, right? We can have an hour talking about that because that's like, let's that's like a strategic discussion. And then obviously there is the, okay, can you build and fix some stuff for us, which is probably takes up the other seven. But no, thank you for that. I think you've given me enough there to kind of plant the seeds in some of our audience, because I've been asked as well, who's your audience members? Well, actually, probably execs, probably people that probably recruiters, probably like, well, I know it's recruiters and ERP professionals, but this is an inherent problem that's system agnostic. Really, as soon as you turn on the computer, what are you expecting it to do? It goes to the heart of it. So no, that's a great one.
Yeah, just a super quick comment on that as well. Is I think roles in the data industry don't cope with this situation too well. And you mentioned system administrator there. At some point in time, it became the job of a system administrator to become like a SQL master, a report generator, and a business analyst.
Basically a
Um,
wizard.
and
Basically,
it's the
it's in
same
the
higher
one.
up as well. So
Yeah.
but like report developers are expected to become like managers, and managers are expected to become head of departments, and there's huge gaps in those chains. We don't give people enough to support them getting transition those roles. Sometimes you just get slapped with a label and given an extra XK on your
Amen.
salary and said do this. So that's I just wanted to just touch on
No, no,
that.
no. I mean, I think this is like a big problem in just the structures of companies themselves. The Because we're evolving. If I was to start my own company now, like a manufacturing company, for example, that I don't know. I don't even want to give an example because I'll be crap at it. But if I was to start one now, all the managers in that department would be somewhat IT literate and have a structure to go, well, actually, it needs to be a data KPI driven structure. Is the systems giving me what I need? I need to make it give it what I need.
Mhm.
I think it needs to be like that, not like, oh, because I think ERPs, in a brilliant way, obviously, have managed to modularize um the company and its departments, and there's different experts, everything running off of that, but they're not all cut from the same cloth. Not every functional analyst will be good at interpreting data. They just care about their functional area. Not every technical person wants to see the big picture. They just want to make the code to work. Not every manager wants to mess with the system. They just want to get by with their spreadsheets. Like, it's honestly probably the most difficult thing. And maybe if you don't understand this, if you're an executive watching this,
Mm.
if you're in the top, and if you haven't synchronized your choir or your symphony, it's gonna be messy. And I can already know, because I've seen it firsthand, and that's where it gets political too, because it depends who you listen to. If you listen only to your ERP provider, if you only listen to the recruiters or consultants you trust, um you have to beware. Maybe you're not getting anywhere because you're not thinking. This isn't even outside the box. It's just being that agnostic type of level of thinking. But all
I'm
right.
just going to stay quiet here because otherwise we'll get into a whole different area.
No,
And yeah,
no, that's cool.
I know we have some stuff to get through. So
No, that's all right. What structure and tips would you give a company that use ERP to get their reporting to a high level? And I think we've touched upon this already, but do you have any like quick kind of things that you can think of?
yeah, so look, I'll just talk a little bit about framework, and I think that um, probably if we'd had this conversation like 5 or 10 years ago, we'd just be talking about pure visualization. We'd be talking about getting the data out and putting it into a tool and making a report or a dashboard that looked nice. That would be a win, right?
Hmm.
And I think nowadays things have changed. So especially from a platform perspective, and what I mean by that is it's not just about visualizing your data, right? It's about preparing your data and cleaning your data and having a data pipeline to make sure that everything happens the same way,
Hmm.
and that logic is not stuck in some local object, whatever that is, or local place somewhere. You talked about the scenario of someone leaving the company and then all the knowledge leaves with them, right?
Hmm.
So I think these are fundamentals that you need to address to make sure that individuals do not have the knowledge that is effectively your company's reporting system. You need to try and work out a way to get that knowledge into a system so that when someone leaves, you can just carry on as normal, or at least, like, for the most part, carry on as normal, right? So that's the first thing I would say. And the second thing is that, again, visualization used to be the end of the story. So when you displayed a dashboard, you'd expect someone to go in and check that dashboard and get the results. And now, again, I think that has completely changed.
Hmm.
I think in terms of the ability to alert and have actionability at the end of that chain, to have predictive analytics, to have something happen. So, for example, if your dashboard spots that a stock level is low, does it have the ability to actually go and trigger a new order because it sees the stock level is low? Or does it have the authorization to be able to send an email to say, can you please go and check this, Bob?
Hmm.
It looks like we're short on widgets in Winchborough this week. So can we resolve that situation? And that's what I mean by actionability, right? And that comes in lots of different forms. It could be a button that you push on a dashboard that says, go and do this thing.
Hmm.
Or it could just be that the reporting ecosystem just knows what to do.
Hmm.
And that's not necessarily AI that does that. That's more in the realms of automation. But again, I think if you really want to excel in terms of, that's a terrible joke. If you really want to get good at reporting, don't use Excel, but use a system that can handle that workflow in an encapsulated way as much as possible. So you really don't want to be shoveling data off between 5 different systems to get to an automation at the end. If you can, you really want that to sit in the same ecosystem and just be like Finding Nemo and just swimming, swimming, swimming along the way to
Hmm.
to the end of the pipe. So that would be my advice: is like find an ecosystem that works for you and use that and set goals to be able to sort of plug in different parts of that ecosystem as you go. That sounds like a big thing, but if you break it down, you can make big things happen pretty quickly, I would say.
Well, I could say like see just some obstacles that would happen in that, because it's almost like companies have a hierarchy for their reporting tools, their preferences, and it's quite hard to shed something like Excel, the trust in, relying on your quote unquote own data, your indispensability. There's a lot of blockages here that would prevent the free flow of data, and thus the quite easily the standardization of the data reporting, not just even just how you enter the data, which is obviously
Mhm.
a massive part of this as well. um,
That's I think, Rob, that's why you need CXO support to be able to make these things happen. It's not just a case of like a data developer going up to his manager and saying, we really need to put a workflow in here. It has to be a data literacy conversation, and it has to be an understanding that the business wants to commit to report better internally and to its clients, and to be consistent, to be cutting edge. And as with all of these things, right, it comes with accountability. So
mhm.
often it sorts out the businesses that really are committed to doing it and the ones that don't, because the ones that don't just continue to bob along with whatever they have and just get along. But how secure can you really be that the things that you're reporting are correct consistently? Um, and if you don't know, how do you convince your clients that you know as well in those types of scenarios? So like there's no right or wrong here, but there's lots of things to consider, like you say, about how far you take that.
Honestly, I just see this as it needs to be an external drive or an internal drive. But when, as an internal, like me, would you be able to just go, okay, I'm going to block out 2 days to do a data drive and get everyone in the same room? Usually it's like, oh, we need to get someone that's outside that's expensive, or everyone needs to jump on this. Like, and that's when the manager like gets the motivations from. But um I think it's important to just go and start from scratch and go, "Oh, okay, as a department, okay, what is your KPIs? What are you relying on?" And then it's almost like you go back to your main, like, I don't know, like a criminal wall, and you almost go, okay, this is how it goes, and you need to step back, and then you
Mhm.
can build your strategy. Because at the end of the day, you wouldn't know that coming in. I wouldn't, like, anyone that's coming into a business, they need to figure that out for themselves, and it's quite tough. Obviously, you can. Okay, funny question for you, and obviously this is a consulting question anyway, that for everybody, but how much reliance do you think consultants need to be given? And do you think it's some why is it some companies still think they're magic bullet? Or is it just, yeah, again, I mean, this might not even be a question more than a statement, but yeah, yeah, I guess this whole conversation is just about trying to justify the different, different.
Okay, so I can see you're having trouble formulating the question, but I think I
Yeah,
have the answer,
yeah,
right?
sorry.
So
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think I think the way that you normally see from a consultancy perspective, right? A consultant's job from an external standpoint is always to give their best fit opinion for the problem that's at hand, whether it's the one that wants to be heard or not. That's the company's decision about whether they want to action that, right? So to soften that blow, what I often find as a consultant is that the first thing I'm looking for when I go in is low hanging fruit. And usually that means a proof of concept or solving one small problem that gives big value.
Mhm,
And how do you do that? Well, to start with, let's just give an example, right? Instead of digging into all of the technical stuff that happens underneath an ERP, you might just take the output of a report that you have already and feed it into a dashboard and make it look nice, give you the top 5 KPIs that you promised.
mhm,
They might not be correct under the hood, and that's important to say, but what it does is it starts to build trust with the organization that oh, right, so they built something and I can see my top 5 things. And when this thing happens, I get a trigger. So when something goes wrong, I know about it. And though I think those types of flows can really help to build trust, and trust builds security, and security builds funds, and funds bolsters the wallet for the project, which might become a data transformation in the end. So, as you pointed out, it's extremely difficult if there's no impetus in the business to say we need to undergo a data transformation project that's going to take 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get that buy-in that way unless your C-suite is ready to go in that direction. However, if you can take steps towards value and say, well, we've proved it here, now what if we prove it here? And if we proved it in 2 places, can we prove it in a department? Can we get budget for that? And then, well, we've kind of set a precedent now. So we've done it in this department and it's working well and data governance is in place. So can we then roll that out further? And look, I know I'm talking about the happy path, right? And I get that. But if we stay the same, nothing changes, right? And that's the thing here, is that it's very, very easy just to sit there and say, not me, I'm not doing that. But the companies that will win will be the ones that can handle their data and use that data, because it's not just about dashboards anymore. It's about leveraging data to make your company the best thing that it can be in terms of the product that it gives and the information that it gives out. That's who people trust. Mm-hmm. Those are the companies that people trust, the ones that show they are using data and can prove, not just say, but prove what they're doing.
Hey, absolutely.
Sorry, that's probably not the question you asked, but I think
no.
right? Yeah.
All I'm really trying to, I was just throwing like problems at you. I wasn't really asking a question, and I was also making statements. So I do this quite a lot. But I think I'm just a bit. It's just frustrating because I guess execs will make budgets. They'll try and cut costs, and it's difficult to go and be more proactive with something like as liquid as data. Like, it sounds like it's not. It doesn't. I don't want to make it sound like it's snake oily, but it sounds. It's hard to put a definition in it because it really touches on everything that you do. Like, it's almost like it's almost like having a doctor, right? A data doctor almost, like for your systems. But whilst we're in that topic, like, because we're talking basics here,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just throw you this basic question: How can a company maintain good data?
I think this job is a bit easier than it used to be in the past. I think that especially in the land of ERP, and I remember this from my days with IFS, a lot of stuff was unvalidated when it came into the system, right? It was just a free text field, or just put in anything, and it could be a number, it could be a text, and then when you try and do some kind of analysis on it at the other end, you just get fried because it just isn't there. So I think data quality and data trust is a big thing here, and ultimately it's down to the business to decide whether the tooling that they have within their systems does this job well enough. But I can tell you that if you don't maintain good data, then you cannot report effectively at the other end, because how do you categorize something that isn't in a category? I'm going to name check someone here. I'm going to name check someone called Susan Walsh, who is the classification guru, and she's a good friend of mine, and she works in the procurement space.
Okay.
And this is what she deals with day in and day out. This is what she deals with. Is this how is this data categorized? What if it's got a capital H instead of a small h and an extra space at the end? How do you handle that? Because technically it's not wrong, it's just not right either. And kind of the mitigation of this is sometimes what happens is that you use intermediate tooling like a BI tool or something that sits on top of your system and fixes it so that it shows right on the front end. And that's just like a massive no-no, because that means that your fundamental data is not being fixed. You're just sticky plastering it as well. So the answer to your question, I think, is two things. Okay. One, you have to be quite vigilant when the data goes into the system to start with.
Right.
And two, you need to make sure you have data quality infrastructure to be able to test, to make sure that data is in the place where it should be and it has a trust score that you can really like put faith in
Hmm.
before it gets to this point of reporting. Some businesses use reporting tools to expose that, and I think that's a different use case for a reporting tool, which is very, very good. But it does depend on the system. So really focus on getting the data in right and making sure that it's quality checked, I think, are the two things that I would really focus on.
I love that there is also a dedicated person just doing that, because it gives a drive, it gives it a soul, it gives it a purpose. It's not just a let's come by, let's all. Although it is everybody's responsibility, um, and even IT to some level, but not IT. Like, I mean, this is the crazy part on some of these things. The ownership of it as well. I would imagine it's
Mm.
probably such a big loose term that you need to nail it down, put it in someone's job description, for goodness sake. And then, like, that's exactly what's happened here. Okay. We're getting through this quite well, actually. So I'm not precious in time. If we've got through everything, that's fine. But just quickly, substance versus style. I know this is all kind of like shallow and stuff, but this is the funniest thing I've noticed everywhere, where reports could be just sold and it looks flashy, it looks good. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna chuck money at it. Um, I think we've covered the substance part, but what's your quick take on that? Like,
My quick take on that is that no one wants to hear this, right? But the reality is that 80% of reporting use cases could be handled by like a line chart or a bar chart. And no one wants to hear that, right? When they've got their Apple Watch charts flashing up and down on their dashboards. But the reality is that those types of visualizations should be used for pretty special use cases. And if your dashboard looks boring, it's probably doing a great job. And
mm,
again, that's a controversial statement. So quite
wow,
often what you find when like the buy-in side, you
mhm,
get the flashy dashboard for the buy-in, and
mm,
then when you start building the stuff out,
it doesn't look as good
it's
as
a
the
lot
sales
more like.
presentation.
But just to add, just to add a part to that as well. I mean, obviously there's a lot of great visualization people out there, and I've read like Stephen Few's books about visualization techniques. Steve Wexler has got another,
That's
the big
what
book
sells,
of
right?
dashboards as
But
well.
but
So
that's what sells. The good looking, um, you know, quick. It's in my watch. That's the sort of like things that
yeah,
sell.
yeah,
But like you said, what actually drives value is the boring stuff.
yeah. And I think you can make boring stuff still look really good by having it in a framework and having it in a template and making sure that every report looks the same. That makes things look good when they look consistent. So I think consistency is a very underrated part of visualization. Not everything has to look like it's going to win like a Nobel Prize for visualization. So
I wanted to add something on this as well, because I've been a CRM consultant for 5 years, and I've done a CRM systems. Um, for the users of this, the salespeople, they need stylish reports for their
mm,
clients. I
yeah,
mean, they absolutely need to. That's probably one of the only use cases I could think of, because, like you said, you probably won't. The execs probably won't care. They want to know the data, but actually, salespeople, they want to wow people with their data.
mhm.
So it's fun. I think this just a fun joust, really, because yeah, it's just we're talking about reporting. Okay.
I think just the last touch point on that is
Yeah.
that if you're trying, I think the exception is if you're trying to tell a very specific story, right? If you're
Right.
trying to tell a very specific story
I
about your
love that
data,
word. Yeah.
then you might go out and get someone who is brilliant at telling stories with data and
Right.
might do something bespoke for you. And again, I'll just name check someone here, someone like Nadie Bremer out there who just is
Right.
like super awesome at doing that kind of work. But if we're bedding in the area of ERP here, then probably, yeah, unfortunately, we're in the the bar chart and line chart world, or we should be. and never in the pie chart world, Rob. Never ever in the pie chart world.
No,
I won't get into that discussion right now, but I'll just make the statement and leave it there.
not even percentages.
2-segment pie charts are fine. Everything else is not.
Okay. No, cool. Okay, let's move. I think the final point in the last 15 minutes, I would say, is let's talk about AI. Let's talk about how do you think AI changes this landscape? Let's say I've got one prepped here. Like, do you think we can be rid of data entry roles with AI soon? Not, I wouldn't say completely, but like, you know where I'm going with this. How do you think jobs like this can change data type jobs and reporting type jobs? What's your
Well,
take?
I think that obviously we've had the DeepMind has been incoming over the last few days, which has sort of changed. But really, the state of AI in the last 18 months has changed everything massively. And
DeepSeek,
as
right?
a small, sorry,
Deep,
DeepSeek, sorry, not
that's okay.
DeepMind.
That's
Yeah.
all right. They all sound all like
Uh,
think. They're like open AI. They all sound like the sci-fi coming to life. Really. So no, it's all right. I was
yeah. And I think that we should look at this in a different way, right? Rather than get rid of data entry roles, I think the way that we can look at this is that I'm pretty sure AI will do a pretty good job soon of covering like the 80/20 use case of data entry and cleansing that data based on machine learning and business rules. And you can just, whenever you get a user input, an AI can probably look at it and say it's correct or not, or whether it needs to be revalidated. And
right.
that will change a lot of things in terms of data entry.
Right.
And that will happen automatically without a person needing to be there. So I think the really important thing to mention here is that AI is not going to get rid of jobs in this scenario. It just means that people will be doing less menial tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of someone looking to see if there's a space or a capital letter or whether it fits in this place,
Mm-hmm.
something will just do that, and they'll be able to do something much more meaningful with their time. And I think it's all about elevation rather than this is really a glass half empty, half full situation, right?
You're right. You're right.
But to think that just because ChatGPT is out there, it's going to replace all of the content creatives in the world, not going to happen, right?
I would add to that. I would say something like, imagine not having a data entry role, not having an admin, but actually a steward working with the AI, and then thinking about things to make it better, and using that like they're as a tool rather than doing the entry themselves. I mean, they probably still be doing that, but they still need to check that. So it's like you said, the role just evolved. They won't be getting rid of, but then in turn, it's just a mind shift for everybody. A lot of like I wouldn't say retraining, but maybe for older generations. But I'm
Uh,
excited to see it. Like, would the company, and it's almost like the heart of what we're talking about here. Technology is rapidly changing, even roles within industries, and a lot of it is outdated right now, or pretty much out of date, right? Um, okay.
I mean, I'll give you just one example on that, and the way that I have changed the way that I work. So when I'm
This one.
so oh yeah, how does it affect reporting your current consultancy? So like disclaimer here, I don't really use like AI to build code or anything like that yet. I'm still probably not quite in that place yet. If a tool has a code builder, I
That's
will
great.
use that. But you don't, at the moment, I'm not in a place where I'm going out to GPT or somewhere like that and asking it to build code for me. That's not where it's at. However, I think that what has become an everyday thing for me is having an LLM that I can speak to and ask questions. And I don't even mean like type it in, because from a neurodiversity point of view, it's really hard for me to sit down and concentrate for 3 hours typing things into an LLM or chatbot. So having a button that I can press where I can just literally speak like I'm speaking to you to an LLM and say, I've got this big problem. Can you help me work it out? These are the things that you need to consider. And I think this is a super important differentiator. I'm not asking it to solve the problem. I'm asking it to shape the solution that I'm going to. And I think that's a really important distinction, because the businesses that are going to be ahead are going to be the ones that are going to leverage AI to solve problems rather than to give the code that solves the problem, if that makes sense. So that's the biggest change that I see. And the last thing that I'll say there with AI is that I'm always looking for tooling that can help, right? Not solve, but help and automate. I recently partnered with someone in a newsletter course that I'm writing that knows all about all kinds of automation tools, and she's an amazing person to know, because I can speak to her and say, I need something for this. Can you give me a recommendation? And then it just cuts out, like, let's say 20% of my effort on a task immediately. And I think that's the way that we need to look at this. It's not a replacement scenario. It's just, can we save ourselves time? Can we stop having to do those tasks that really suck?
Perfect. And
That's
actually, I've got a couple more questions that I just want to get out the woodwork.
sure.
So I want to say, talk Qlik specifically. What can Qlik's competitive advantage be over something like Power BI, which may be more built in, let's say, with IFS? And then for IFS specifically, what types of work have you done that's received the best feedback over the years? So just a couple of well, we start with this one. What
Mhm.
again? Just a fun. Let's pit them against each other kind of scenario.
Well, this is controversial, but we'll go with it anyway.
Yeah, let's
So
do
I think one of the things that Qlik has been doing an amazing job of recently
it.
is from an acquisition perspective as well. So in terms of building an overall platform, um, like the data ingestion, the data quality, they partnered with Talent, well, they bought Talent last year as well, which helps to knock off all of those things. They also bought Kindy to be able to deal with their LLM situation and build Qlik Answers to deal with unstructured data. So before you know it, you've got like a platform that you can just like pick up and put down, and it deals with everything from your data entry, data quality, validation, trust scores, right the way through the visualization layer and all of the governance that's with that. And on the other side, you've got like the application automation that sits there and is able to push things out and say, do this, do that at the end of the visualization as well. So when you combine that with the power of the unstructured data and being able to, so ERP systems are full of documents, so be able to suck out all those documents, push them into a localized LLM and ask specific parameterized questions
Hmm.
with all that ecosystem that's in Qlik in terms of security, it's just incredibly powerful. And I think to do that with Power BI, and I'll widen it to the Microsoft sphere, to do that, it might seem like more cost effective to get started on Power BI, but I can tell you, when you add it all up, man, you're going to be paying a huge bill to Microsoft, like a massive bill to do all of the same thing in Fabric with Power BI. So I'll just leave it at that.
No, let's leave it at that. I think, like I said, everyone has a preference, and everyone deserves to get heard. And I think we deserve, as me as a consumer, and we need to be more frank about this, because otherwise, my LinkedIn is just gonna be about why this is the best tool, and everyone's just tiptoeing around, and that's a great answer. Let's say IFS specifically. What types of work have you done that just received the best feedback over the year? Like, let's say, like, or just ERP if you don't
Mhm.
have. Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, I think that ERP in general are doing a bit of a better job with their reporting scenarios right now. They're doing a bit of a better job with their planning scenarios. I still feel that the stuff that goes down really, really well with the ERP side of things is the actionability side that comes out the other end of the visualizations.
Mention.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's not necessarily that this looks better or it provides more information, but I think still two things just like cut it apart. I think the first one is the ability to slice the data the way that you need to. I still don't think ERPs do that well enough and still adopt a report generating methodology, which doesn't seem right in this day and age. So that's the first thing. And the second one is automation and being able to, because you're using a third party tool to do it, you're able to trigger some kind of automation on the other end that may or may not be in IFS. It might be in your HR system, it might be in your stock ordering system, it might be in that little add-on system that you've got a little bolt-on for IFS or an
So
ERP as well. There's lots of those around.
so
So
like it's gone red. Have you done anything about it automatically, or has it just gone red? Like, yeah,
yeah,
things
an
have gone.
ERP will tell you that it's gone red, but it's not often that it will actually instigate something afterwards to resolve that red.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I can think
yeah,
of,
I think
yeah,
those are the main things. Yeah,
yeah, definitely think of like a trigger that could do that. I guess a custom event in IFS that would be great. And
yeah.
also thinking about how maybe a bunch of reports are in business reports or in, like you say, crystal reports or something like report designer. Or actually,
Mhm.
what is the purpose of those reports? Are those, to me, the printable ones you send to your clients? They, yeah, acceptable. They need to be in crystal reports. They need to be in um, report designer. But if you're talking like you're generating dashboards and solutions to be able to make decisions on from, that is not the best use case
Mhm.
for those types of reports. It needs to be something else. And I
Yeah,
think,
and
yeah,
yeah, look, if you're serious and you're doing things like building client portals and stuff like that, don't just expose your ERP internal reports, because that won't impress your clients. And I think that's where what this boils down to really is, if you want to impress your clients, and you mentioned it yourself with the sales guys on the road, um, you have to have the tools to be able to do that. So probably, and where if looks could kill, I think that's probably where it makes a big difference. So
I think for IFS, the service side as well is one of those areas where um obviously different probably needs more probably for the function of people on the road and the actual managers managing that work. So obviously that'll be more substance than style. But I guess different. It's a very it's like tailored for different audiences. You have to know them. But great, yeah, you're right. It needs to be actionable for this particular question. Actionable, sliceable. That's a word. Maybe like, yeah, like how can and this what. Oh, I want to finish out. Like, is there anything you want to finish out? But like for me, what really stood out for me is 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 having that large language model outside of your ERP system that actually does the different SKUs that you want. So it's almost like you've already organized the company's data needs to be able to go into it in different libraries and go type it in quickly, get the
mhm.
result. It's almost like one search, right? That gets it. I can almost visualize it what you're telling me here. But is there any closing thoughts that you want to partake? And I hope this isn't the last time I'll speak to you at some point again. If there is a massive shift in data and reporting, you're my guy. But I really thank you for everything. I just want to hear, is there any closing thoughts you want to impart on for ERPs?
Yeah, look, I think if there's one key word I would focus on, it's probably evaluate. Like, it's really important not to just go ahead and do things for the sake of just doing them. There has to be a real reason behind it. And that goes for reporting with ERP as well. And if you are finding that it's solving your problems and it's meeting your needs, then there's no need to change. And if you do change, there's no need to make it click that you change to. That's just the thing that I use. So keep your mind open with solutions that are on the market. Understand that the big things that you really need to focus on are, what are you trying to get out of it, and is your data quality good enough to give you the results that you need, and start from there. The very last piece of advice I would give is, do not lead with tooling. Lead with your ethos of your company. Lead with what you're trying to understand from your data and your information, and the path will make itself clear as you start to work along that process if you do it right.
Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the other side.
You're very welcome, mate. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.